Did a prehistoric civilization from over 10,000 years ago actually exist? Was Plato telling the truth about Atlantis? The metal artifacts you are looking at right now date back a staggering 10,000 years. This isn't a hoax, it's a genuine historical mystery. North America, a land we often assume was devoid of ancient ruins, has actually yielded over 10 tons of these ancient copper artifacts over the last 50 years. And they all date back thousands, even tens of thousands of years. That means 10,000 years ago, an advanced civilization that had already entered the Copper Age existed on the North American continent. Is that even possible? Archaeologists didn't want to believe it at first, but today they have no choice but to label them the Old Copper Complex. But where did their copper come from? Why, aside from these scattered artifacts, can we find no ruins and no descendants? It's as if they appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as suddenly. Baffled, archaeologists could only pin down the timeline of their rise and fall. This ancient copper culture began 11,000 years ago and mysteriously vanished 3,100 years ago. So, who were they? Could they be connected to the legendary city of Atlantis? Today, our story begins with the enigma of a prehistoric Serpent Mound. Chapter 1. Serpent Mound and the 500,000-ton copper mystery. Is Serpent Mound really a prehistoric observatory? It lies quietly on a cliff overlooking Brush Creek in Ohio, USA. This is a massive ancient earthwork stretching 1,348 feet, 411 meters. Its body coils along the edge of the cliff, its tail curling into an intricate spiral. The body undulates, exactly 7 times. And its head? It's an open mouth, seemingly trying to swallow a giant ball of fire. What exactly is this? When it was first discovered in 1848, 2 prominent American archaeologists wrote that its true form is a mystery, visible only to the gods. Did primitive Native Americans really possess the architectural planning and aerial perspective required to build this thousands of years ago? 50 years later, the godfather of Harvard archaeology visited the site. He concluded that it was nothing more than a giant tomb, perfectly aligning with the burial customs of savage Native American chiefs. However, when he actually excavated the serpent's body, he found absolutely nothing inside. Beneath the mound were just carefully sifted layers of dirt, ash, and scorched stones. This wasn't a tomb at all. So, what was it? To save face, the archaeological heavyweight left future generations with a standard textbook answer before leaving. Oh, it was built by the local Adena people 2,300 years ago. It's just an altar used to pray for a good harvest. This conclusion was written into textbooks, and people believed it for over a century. But could it really have nothing to do with a prehistoric civilization? Authority left no room for questions, and the mystery went back to sleep. Until we look at this 18-ton chunk of pure copper exposed on the surface. Look at these countless hammerstones scattered across ancient mining pits. Look at these geological layers that have clearly been excavated. Who on earth was mining this copper? And what about the massive, discarded chunks of pure copper ore in these prehistoric pits? Or the deep, densely packed mine shafts and the faint traces of ancient transportation routes on the surface? Are you seriously telling me that Native Americans casually dug all of this up over thousands of years just to hammer out some fishing hooks? In 1953, Roy Dreyer, a professor of metallurgical engineering from Michigan Tech, felt his intelligence was being deeply insulted. He teamed up with a colleague, nuclear physicist Octave Du Temple, to give North American archaeologists a much-needed math lesson. First, they zeroed in on a map. This showed the known distribution of Native American mining pits, primarily clustered around Lake Superior, the westernmost of the Great Lakes. The pits were most densely packed on Isle Royale, an island in the middle of the lake, practically covering the entire land mass. So, they went to Isle Royale. There's an old story on this island. A mining company once enthusiastically landed here to strike it rich, only to pack up and leave a few years later. Why? Because they found nothing. They realized that ancient engineers had already done all the work. No matter where they scouted a high-grade copper vein, one strike of the shovel would reveal that the earth beneath was already hollowed out. And we aren't talking about small holes. Some pits were 20 feet, 6 meters deep, and dozens of feet wide. There were even open-air mining trenches stretching for miles. The two professors randomly selected ancient pits buried under the dirt, excavated them completely, and measured their length, width, and depth. Then, using the copper-grade data provided by the Geological Survey, they reverse-engineered how much pure copper each pit could have produced. They counted from the sky in an airplane, while their students did the grunt work on the ground. Tatui. Final tally? There were nearly 5,000 of these pits on Isle Royale alone. The most absurd mining trench was miles long and dozens of feet deep, looking like a massive scar on the earth. A few months later, the experts ran the numbers. We are looking at a total of 500,000 tons of pure copper. So, archaeologists, how? Do you explain 500,000 tons of pure copper? How many fishing hooks does that make? 500 million? No. 50 billion hooks. Okay? Even if we assume Native Americans spent thousands of years hammering out 50 billion fishing hooks, where are they? As metallurgy experts, the professors bluntly explained to the world what 500,000 tons actually means. You know the Roman Empire at its peak, right? They monopolized the resources of all of Europe and North Africa, yet their annual copper production was only about 15,000 tons. This 500,000 tons of copper would be enough to supply the Roman Empire for over 30 years. It is enough to forge tens of millions of blades and arm a massive army that could sweep across the ancient world. This was a highly organized, disciplined, and possibly even mechanically assisted national-level heavy industry that lasted for millennia. There is absolutely no way this was the work of a few guys in canoes picking up rocks to grind into fish hooks. The archaeologists were left speechless. But how do we explain the mystery of these prehistoric mines? Chapter 2. Shattering the Ice Chamber and the Phantom X. Gene, why do the North American archaeologists in these stories always seem a bit clueless? It's because, for over a century, the North American archaeological community was locked down by an invisible Bible. The first page of this book, written by the Pope of Archaeology, Alois Hrdlicka, laid down an untouchable iron law. North America was an ice-sealed chamber. This was based on the irrefutable geological evidence of the Laurentide ice sheet. At least 13,000 years ago, Earth looked like this. North America was covered by a massive ice cap, much like Antarctica is today. This was a super ice sheet, nearly 2 miles, 3 kilometers thick. To put that in perspective, the thickest part of the Antarctic ice sheet today is only about 2.5 miles. So, prior to 13,000 years ago, before this ice melted, the Great Lakes and the Bering Land Bridge connecting to Asia simply didn't exist. Try crossing a 2-mile-high wall of ice with 10,000-year-old gear. This ice wall was as tall as 3.5 Burj Khalifas stacked on top of each other. It was a white fortress stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic, a dead zone where not even a mosquito could survive. If prehistoric humans wanted to come over, they had to sit patiently in Alaska. They had to wait until 13,000 years ago, when the Earth warmed, the ice melted, and an ice-free corridor split open. Only then did humans, armed with stone tools and wearing animal skins, chase their prey into the heartland of the Americas. Therefore, a prehistoric civilization in the Americas? Impossible. There are no ancient ruins here. Thus, the 500,000 tons of mined copper? Just Native American fish hooks. That giant prehistoric Serpent Mound? Just a harvest altar thrown together by Native Americans. However, as we saw with those prehistoric copper artifacts, since 1952, sites across North America, especially around the Great Lakes, have yielded a staggering amount of items. Over 10 tons in total. Awls, buckles, bracelets, fish hooks, spades, you name it. They even found copper spearheads with sleek, razor-sharp lines and a socketed base designed to be fixed to a shaft using friction and rivets. This looks like a product of modern engineering. Yet, they all point back to the prehistoric era, 7,500 to 10,000 years ago, and it gets crazier. Underwater archaeology has discovered ancient altars resembling the Sangxingdui ruins in China. It appears this ancient civilization intentionally smashed their copper tools, threw them into the water, and just left. Why would they do that? Why did they vanish without a trace? Who exactly were they? Fast forward to 1998, in a top-tier genetics lab at Emory University. A PhD student named Michael Brown was agonizing over some data. At the time, textbooks rigidly stated that Native Americans had only 4 founding maternal lineages, A, B, C, and D. All of their roots pointed back to Siberia in Asia. This was treated as gospel. But Dr. Brown had a set of blood samples from the Ojibwe people of the Great Lakes region, and hidden within these samples was a phantom X gene. No matter how many times he tested it, it didn't fit into A, B, C, or D.